Hey, Biology One, very good with the work you've been turning in. Just keep them rolling, and I just keep trying to follow you and grade and answer questions best I can, and we'll keep progressing. So we have talked about DNA coding for protein. The protein creates your body, basically the structure of your body, and performs the functions to get your body to build and sustain itself. So very important stuff. And so these proteins are made by RNA coding off of the gene. That's called protein synthesis. And then you've also learned that the other thing that happens with DNA is that when cells are ready to divide, that it will unzip, completely replicate itself, and then one cell can divide into two cells because you got the DNA information on each side. So the process of sorting that replicated DNA is called mitosis if we're talking about body cells. So body cells make up almost all the cells in your body because they do. They are your lung cells, your blood cells, the cells in your muscles, in your bones. All this structure is made from somatic or body cells. And then you've got a special kind of cell also, and those are your gametes. And gametes are made from cells that make them. And so the cells that make the gametes are called germ cells, and we can also say that gametes themselves are germ cells. And then the gametes are the sperm and the eggs in your body. And I'm going to back up for one quick demonstration, and that is just to show you out of that whole body that represents you. Here's where the gametes are, either in the ovaries or in the testes. And so just like if you look at like the thumb joint down, like organs that are not very large relative to the whole body, we're talking about very few cells representing those reproductive cells. So when we start talking about meiosis, which is the other ways that cells divide, remember it's very few cells, but it's really important because those are the cells passed on to the next generation. And meiosis is going to be more complex, sorry, it is, than plain old PMAT. So meiosis involves going through a restructuring of the chromosomes so that the chromosomes you got from your mom and the chromosomes that you got from your dad are actually going to jumble up so that the eggs that your body produces or the sperm that your body produces is going to be a jumbling of what you got from your mom and dad, so that then those cells would go on to join the jumbling of somebody else's reproductive cells, gametes, and there would be a great variety in the offspring. And so variety in offspring becomes super important, and here's why. Because the world is ever changing, and this enables a population, and we can expand that out to a species, to fare well in the world that is ever changing, to be able to roll with the punches and deal with whatever situations variation makes a population hardier. It makes it more capable of surviving as changes come up in the world. And so variations can be very tiny accumulations of things, and there's no way of predicting the world. So we don't know which ones are best to retain, but through this process of meiosis, it kind of helps us hedge our bets. And so with this COVID-19 experience, we know that there are some people who don't get as sick, who manage the virus better, and that very much has to do with genetics as well as general health and keeping your nutrition up, which is something we addressed earlier on this continuous learning spectrum. So keeping your somatic body healthy as you can, and feeding yourselves the right nutrition and giving yourself the right exercise so that your lungs are hardy. But then on top of that, some of us may just be less likely to allow the COVID virus into those protein pathways that allow it into the cells, or our antibodies might be more likely to recognize those invaders and knock them down. So that's for this virus, and it could be other variations in other people's bodies that make them stronger for coping with other things, and on and on and on and on. So the genes that make up our code can involve lots of fun things like, you know, eye color, whether or not your hair is wavy, and stuff that we can see on the outside and talk about, oh, look at these differences. But there are a lot of differences going on the inside of our bodies too. Now, one more thing to point out is at the beginning of a PowerPoint that I offered up in, I think, the last or the second to last thing that I posted, that pointed out that viruses reproduce really quickly, and bacteria not as quickly as viruses, but pretty darn quickly. They're single-celled, very simple cells. And then eukaryotes, even a single-celled eukaryote would be carrying more genetic information to run the more complex cells with all their organelles. And then, oh my goodness, when you get into multicellular organisms, you and me, 50 to 100 trillion cells, gosh. So that is difficult, and we got to grow our bodies all the way up and then get to reproductive age before we can even talk about having a generation. So our time is really slow. Every generation we have mutations. Every generation of your somatic cells you have mutations. So every time a cell divides, some of the DNA is going to get misread. So that's at a rate of maybe what is it, like 1 in every 30 million base pairs, nitrogen base pairs. So, and that equates into 100 to 200 base pair mutations per generation. In your body cell, that stays in your body. So if my skin cells are mutating, I end up with like a little extra mole over time. Wasn't there when I was a kid? Yeah, you know, and we got to watch some of those though, because, you know, if it spirals out of control, that could be something cancerous within my body I'd need to take care of, but it wouldn't be passed to the next generation. But so with meiosis and the very few cells that make up sperm or egg, those being passed on will create the lasting changes that go generation to generation. But with slow generation time and just, you know, the same mutation rate as a virus would have, but more DNA, so more things that could get mutated, but it's still so slow, such a slow process. And so that's why having meiosis kind of step in and start jumbling up the ways that the mixtures of genes that would be dished out to each individual new offspring, that becomes kind of important, because when you start mixing up those recipes, you get variety that we don't know how, you know, different genes might interplay in new mixes. So that kind of keeps things exciting, gives us all our individual traits, and makes us and every other organism that goes through this process hardier in the world, gives us better chances for survival. So pretty neat stuff. So we're moving into genetics, talking about meiosis, remembering that meiosis is not the typical way our cells divide, that it's special for just our gametes. It's how sperm are made and how eggs are made, so that they have more variation, and also so that they have half the information. So they're not going to have the paired chromosomes. You have 46 chromosomes, which are in 23 pairs. But now we don't want that, because you can't keep adding chromosomes into the cells. You'd run out of space, right? We want to keep our number of chromosomes at 46, and that means that each egg and each sperm is going to have only one instead of a set of each of the chromosomes. It's going to have just one of them, okay, with jumbled information. So it's got some of mom's information and some of dad's information. So it's not just the chromosome number 1 that was given to you by mom, but it's a mixture. But only half that information. So there will be 23 chromosomes in a sperm, 23 chromosomes in an egg. And when those fuse together in that original cell, in that zygote, that's going to create the 46 chromosomes that we all know and love and are in all of our body cells. All right, hope that made you some sense. I'll be pushing some information forward about meiosis, and be well, and thanks for listening.